حول خيامنا لا تزرعي الريحان لست مقيم طالما أشكو غرامي يا نور الوجود طالما أشكو غرامي يا نور الوجود وأنادي يا بلادي يا معدن الجود وأنادي يا بلادي يا معدن
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream. Streaming from New Brunswick, New Jersey, where it is a Thursday. It's pretty gray out and it was snowing earlier in the day, which is a good sign. I love the snow. Everyone, I mean, who doesn't love the snow unless you have to shovel it, but everyone loves the snow. And today I'm joined by my friend Imran, one of the first and one of the best podcasters. He is the founder, one of the founders, maybe he's going to say, of the Mad Mamluks podcast. And we're going to talk today. Why don't we bring Imran on? Everyone knows Imran. Nobody needs an introduction for him. But if you don't know his face, he's from the Mad Mamluks podcast. Okay. And we're going to first talk about this 80-year curse. All right, bring our man on. There we go. Imran, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Salam, rahmatullah. Very good, very good.
Thank you for having me, Sheikh.
So, did you read what I posted yesterday on about the 80-year curse? The so-called supposed 80-year curse?
Yeah, it's interesting that how that plays into the Israeli psyche. Do you want to give the intro for the listeners who are not informed about it?
Yeah, so let me, to introduce everybody about this, not a lot of people had heard about it, and probably not a lot would have, except that recently Israeli presidents themselves have been invoking it, right? I mean, this is terrible. Like, the worst thing you want to do is talk about the last thing that you want to happen. Whether you're talking about it in a positive or a negative light, it doesn't make a difference. So let me read to you here. And by the way, I do have a critical approach to this. So don't think I'm just parroting this and saying, oh, there's a curse. And here we are epistemologically as Asha'ira, and as we don't just take anything as a belief, as certainty, right? We're very, much more critical than that. And definitely claims of curses is one of the sources of knowledge that does not yield any certainty whatsoever. But it's just an interesting thing to listen to, or to hear about. So listen to Ehud Barak, former president of Israel. He said, throughout history, Jews did not rule for more than 80 years. And when they did, their disintegration began in the 8th decade. So the final fitna, the final blow, right, can be traced back to the fitna of the 80th year, or that happened in not the 80th year, but the decade of the 70s, right, the 8th decade, okay? Netanyahu said that one of the reasons he wants to become prime minister is to ensure Israel's continuity beyond 80. There's a movie was made. It was really clever. It was about a woman who received a premonition that her husband would die, right? She received this premonition. That very day, she had a big blow-up, big fight with her husband, okay? Then she had the premonition. So she's like, oh, I got to fix everything, right? And her premonition was that her husband would die in a week. So she spends the entire week fixing everything, not realizing that he would only die with her. So in thinking that she's going to go around destiny, she actually fulfilled the destiny. Which makes me think, like, why would you care about 80 years, right? It's not a curse. But yet you're like, let me be the one. Maybe you're the one who's going to start it, right? You cannot play around with destiny. Firstly, we don't know if this is destiny at all. I'm just saying that it reminded me of that. When he said that, it reminded me of that movie. Next one, Naftali Bennett, the current president. He said he rallied voters around the idea of breaking the curse. Listen, where would Muslims stand on this? And let's firstly take the evidence, okay? We Muslims do not believe in superstitions, right? We believe in something that has a rational basis, scientific basis, transmitted, Shari, textual basis. All right, Imran, before I continue, you take it away. Give us your opinion while I eat this warm slice of pizza.
So it's funny in the sense where they're drawing all kinds of different inspiration from their history of being expelled from their what they consider is their homeland, and using that as a battle cry that, hey, we can't allow this to happen again, that this is some kind of curse that repeats itself throughout Jewish history. And what is in effect the reason why it's being brought up by politicians such as Netanyahu is that they want to demonstrate that through strength, through pure power and their ability to beat down the Palestinians to a pulp, to completely eradicate this problem, the only politician that is able to do that is Netanyahu. That, at least that's what the way they're framing it as, because Netanyahu is incredibly unpopular in the Israeli media, in their wider Israeli society. And so they're using these images and these historical references to show that, hey, through power, through sheer will, determination, and brutality, we will prevail over the Palestinians.
Listen, what do you think of the evidence? There's only been 2 kingdoms before this. Okay?
Right.
The Davidic kingdom, David and Solomon, 80 years. Then they collapsed. They got so rich.
1050.
Yeah, they got 1050 BC.
Yeah, BC.
They got so rich, and their soldiers were traveling, conquering lands, and meeting all these other women and marrying these pagan women. Not allowed for them, I don't think. They bring the pagan wives back, and the pagan wives said, oh, honey, can I have an idol? Can I keep my idol here? And they say yes. And they started allowing for this. Even in some versions of the biblical story, Solomon himself caves in to an East African beauty who wants her idol. And he says, okay, you can have your idol. And then sometime later, she says to him, come and go to the temple with me. And they start having idolatry. And this is why the Quran says, وَمَا كَفَرَ Suleiman. Suleiman never made kufr. Explain to me why would the Quran give the attribute of a prophet the most basic thing, that he didn't disbelieve. Of course he didn't believe. He's a prophet. How could he disbelieve? It's because people said he disbelieved. They said he disbelieved and began becoming like a Satan worshiper with black magic, and others said he caved into the idolatry of his wives. So they became so gluttonous that they had a civil war. As Quran says, بَأْسُهُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ شَدِيد. Their civil strife amongst themselves is very bad. They hurt each other badly, Quran says. Okay, next one, the Hasmonean kingdom. The Hasmonean kingdom lasted 77 years. Okay. If you ask me, something occurring twice is not a pattern yet. If it occurs 3 times, I'm start wondering what's going on here. If it occurs 4 times, we got to find out what's going on, right? I think the answer is much simpler. In this period of time, well before October 7th, we were chit-chatting, me and a couple of friends. Imran, you may have remembered, people around you must have been talking the same thing, is that, Palestine shouldn't do anything. The Israelis themselves are at each other's throat so badly that they're going to disintegrate on their own.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and just to interrupt you, their behavior is like a scorned woman. You know what a scorned woman, the behavior is? They use every ammunition at their disposal to destroy the man, right? And ultimately to the detriment of themselves,
Yeah.
where they will eventually use the strategy of mutually assured destruction, where they'll destroy you and themselves
Yeah.
in that process. And it's a very feminine mindset that the Israelis have, where they feel that the world owes them this state because of this perceived idea of them historically being
Raise his volume.
persecuted and stuff. So I'm sorry, you were saying something before I cut you off.
No, I was just saying raise your volume. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Our guy's going to raise your volume.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right, go ahead.
No. So
Yeah.
ultimately, what their mentality is that they're going all out to this extent, where they've ultimately assured their own destruction by using a disproportionate amount of violence, even if they found a legitimate reason to a legal reason for their attack on Hamas, which we know that it's a cover story and it's being used as a way to commit genocide. We know that, but the level of disproportionate violence, where they've dropped the equivalent of 2 nuclear bombs on Gaza, it shows a very scorned type of people who feel like they want to eliminate any possibility of forget about Palestinian state, but any kind of opposition.
Yeah.
And it demonstrates a incredibly weak type of behavior, oftentimes also shown in like prisons and stuff, where a new prisoner will come and beat up the smallest person there to demonstrate how strong he is and prove his ability to or at least get respect in the prison, right?
Yeah.
So these are what and the reason why it's so important to bring these individual type of analysis or breakdowns, because state actors project their way in that same way. They still operate from the same human rules and truths that human beings operate from: strength, power, their own fears, and their desire to feel like they're a legitimate power and their need to be respected. So all these things play into the Israeli psychology that is very important to understand. I know because right now it just seems like doom and gloom, and it's going to be there's no end in sight for Gaza, and it appears that way in all political levels. Everyone is doing their best to put a good spin on it, but ultimately what you're seeing is the last foray or the last push by them to completely rid Gaza and the West Bank of Palestinians and form their one state. These are all policies that are being floated about by Israeli officials in coordination with the United States officials in the White House. They are devising plans for Palestinian populations to be absorbed by different Middle Eastern countries, Egypt, Turkey, etc., and they're all going to be receiving some sort of economic benefit for taking in refugees from Palestine.
And if you look at what they're selling, they've sold off any sympathy that they have ever had. All that was accrued from the Holocaust, all that sympathy, empathy, whatever you want to call it,
The currency.
that currency, they used it all up, and now they're in debt. I mean, anybody who's been bullied in their life, and all these nations that have been bombed in their life, anybody who's poor is sympathizing with Palestinians, right? They're very few, only like the 1% who are financially intertwined with the banks and everything and the lobby.
It doesn't even require poverty. The thing is that most of the world, forget about the Muslim world, most of the world has felt the yoke of colonialism.
Yeah.
So, and that memory is still very much alive. This all ended just barely 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And many of these memories are still inherited all across Africa and Asia and everywhere where the British Empire went to. There's a reason why Irish people still have such a deep affinity towards Palestinian Scottish people as well. These
Yeah.
are countries who felt the brutality that the British Empire leveled against them, and it can't be understated how important it is that we understand that the people of Gaza are. It's almost like a channel for all these people to understand or learn about Islam and the resilience of Muslims in face of these type of hardships.
Well, that's a great demonstration, and Allah is the best of planners, that the demonstration of Muslims' resilience and iman in the face of losing multiple daughters, multiple sons, a leg, an arm. Your son loses a leg. You ask any man, he'd say, I'll lose my leg. I lived already. My son, 5 years old, he hasn't lived yet. Let him keep a leg. But you're seeing these situations. And just when it comes to the colonial side of things, no matter what story you tell, the visual kills it all. You see an area of land where all the countries are tan people. All of a sudden, you got these Russian, Eastern European, people right in the middle. Cite the Bible all you want. No one's buying it, right?
Yeah.
No one's buying it. Abraham didn't look like this. He was from Iraq, what's now called Iraq, right?
Yeah.
Joseph didn't look like this. He was born in the Holy Land, settled in Egypt, right? He didn't look like this. Just the visual aspect, the common man looks at this and says, no, you don't belong there, right? Yeah. You came there artificially, and now you're doing all this, right? So all of this imagery was probably not in people's face before this battle, before this crisis, and before this war, right? This imagery wasn't in people's face. Now people from all continents are sort of glued. I mean, everyone I talk to is glued to this, right? Outside, we expect the community to, but when I talk to people outside the community, they're glued to this. Construction workers, mechanics, cops, everyone who's outside the community is just, that's all they do is watch what's going on. And Allah's the best of planners, because these visuals are not good for them in any way, shape, and form. Now, let me bring up another concept here. Sociologically, anthropologically, psychologically, what happens to a people in 40 years? Okay? Because the Quran mentions being in the wilderness for 40 years, right? Mentions a punishment for worshiping the golden calf. You're going to be in the wilderness for 40 years. The ulama say 40 years is the age of a generation. So the punishment is that you will not be the ones who open up the Holy Land, who enter the Holy Land and live there and settle there, the promised land. So all of the people who worship the golden, that whole generation has to die off. And that's going to happen in the span of 40 years. So if there's anything anthropologically to think about it, I'm not saying this curses any truth to it, but I'm saying let's look at the 80 years is 2 generations. Essentially, it's 2 generations. So the founders add 1 generation to that. Ben Gurion is the first president. Add 40 years, right? Then add a generation now that never met the founders. That's the key. Because the founders transmit their story and struggle to the next generation. Now, the second generation that's born never met the founders, never met the people, and were not raised by the people who struggled and the people who never had Israel. Okay? That second generation now is where the spoil begins. But the 80th year, now that second generation is over. Now is the beginning of the third generation to take over. That third generation, of course, it's not like a click of a button. So that third generation will start to be born within the time of the second generation, but they start taking leadership at the beginning of the next set of 80 years, okay? 40 years. So 40. Now the third generation has not even met those who are with the founders, right? So the third generation is where the mistakes start to be made. The rot is already setting in, but the mistakes, the big blunders, and the accumulation of the small mistakes really starts to take effect. And then that's where, in that generation, the blunders start taking place. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. Ibn Khaldun has talked about in his muqaddimah about how the initial generations do the hard work and all the prosperity happens within the early generations uh, of any kind of civilization, whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim. And as the princes and different generations come forward, they don't have to work as hard, and that this is self-evident in history when you see the Mongols, for example. The Mongols had incredible armies. Their ability to sack capitals all across the world was unprecedented. And as they sat in these capitals and they had new children, and those children lived under the life of luxury, they got fat and they lost their desire to conquer, and they ultimately got absorbed into their native population. So this is ultimately what we are seeing in the West, and why you're seeing such a cry from white nationalist groups who are upset about this pattern of sociological behavior, where they're seeing their children in effect not caring, having very feminine qualities in them, and their ability to work hard has completely diminished. And something this it also talks about why they're or this kind of behavior explains why the thinkers in Washington and European capitals are so desperately bringing in illegal immigrants and immigrants in general, because they know their native population won't be. These guys aren't idiots. They've studied these patterns of these problems. The reason why the United States was so open to bringing in populations from different parts of the world is because they knew that as they got wealthy, their native population wouldn't work as hard, and they tried to solve this generational problem of decline by absorbing people who had the will to pursue the freedom, the freedoms and the different rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All these things were part of their psychology. So, yeah, absolutely.
Immigrants are the ones doing it here. Whites are now realizing that, it's open season on them, and you see more and more, of a defensive posture from them. And a lot of times, I have to say, it's like they sound very mesquite, like they're need sympathy, right? Because they're getting it's totally politically correct to spit on on their legacy and on everything that's white. So it's almost like come first full circle for them. I don't even support that. It's not even right in Islam. But I remember I did my one of my master's papers at Georgetown. I did it with Professor Scott. What was his last name? Redford, I believe. He was a great professor. And he's the one who pointed me to Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah. He said, you need to read this book. I said, I got one. I have one. I didn't read it. But he said, read the book and do a paper on it. So I did a paper on how the Sharia puts in place certain things that, if observed, should disrupt this 4-generation pattern. So again, the 4-generation pattern is as follows. The first generation is raised in a beatdown. They're raised in a situation where they're getting beat down badly. And they end up rising out of that to defeat their enemies and to start a new chapter for their people. The next generation witnesses some of the abuses and hears directly from their parents about what happened, and they carry some of that zeal without carrying a lot of the pain. The third generation, now their grandparents were the ones tell them the stories of all the pain and all the hardship, and they've taken on as a habit now. The society habitually is successful, so they have the habits of successful people. Well, by the end of the third generation, there's been so much success and so much distance from the pain, and the investments put in by the first and second generation start to reap and overflow.
Yeah.
The fourth generation is then born in gluttony.
Yeah.
When they grow old, say again?
Just to summarize, the first generation is typically known as the pioneering generation. It's the ones who do all the hard work. And the second one is the administrative generation. And the third one is the decadent generation.
Hmm.
And the fourth one is called the generational change and renewal.
Yeah, they're the oppressors. They become
Yeah.
oppressors. The
Right.
fourth generation, they're born in such gluttony that they don't work as hard. When they don't work as hard, the investment starts to go down, the money starts to go down, but they're accustomed to a lifestyle that's here. So they must oppress others in order to maintain that lifestyle. They then become the oppressors. They become what their parents were running away from. Right? Well, according to this, if there's any truth to the 80-year theory, they've shrunk it up, or the generation has to be changed to 25 years, right? So that the 80th, that fourth generation is the one that does all the wrong. So, but what I put in that paper was that the Sharia puts in things, acts of worship. If you practice it, okay, it should disrupt this thing. It should disrupt it. Number one, it will disrupt the speed of the growth of your wealth by disallowing usury. Now, you think this is a bad thing, but it's a good thing. If your wealth rises too quickly, the decadence rises with it. But if your wealth rises slowly, right, A, it's more secure, and B, you avoid the decadence. Fasting, right? Fasting. Going out for war if it was a thing. Right? I think one of the mistakes that nations made was that their youth are separated from wars. Well, those youth become politicians. Politicians create more wars without ever having tasted war. I love the Norwegian, there's Scandinavian kings. They had a concept where there cannot ever be a king unless he was part of like a certain number of battles, so that he could think twice before sending youth out into war because he's been there. Right. Let me read you something else. Now, I said here, it would make sense. There would be more to warrant this 80-year belief if there were more examples. And I think there probably are more examples. There are probably examples where Jews live very well under certain nations. And then that collapsed. That goodwill died. I would like to see if there were any compilations of that, how many years they lasted with those people. Like at what point did these nations sour on them? Right? Like that Florida politician who got up and said, we've been getting expelled for 2,000 years. Right? So if you've been getting expelled that many times, like how many decades would pass before the host nation would sour on you? And why? Like, why wouldn't you start asking the question, what happened here? Okay. What did we do? Imagine I say, hey, Imran, let me rent your studio out. Okay, good. What's your reference, your background? I said, oh, I've rented out about 10 studios before. They kicked me out of all of them. You going to rent to me? Right? How about you say, you know what? Instead of renting, you should do some introspection. Right? Do some introspection. If a friend of ours said, hey, listen, I just got divorced. Oh, terrible. Cry on my shoulder. Next year, I got married and I got divorced again. The year after that, married and divorced again. Oh, guess what? You're the problem. Yes, you may be a victim. You got victimized, but the source of the problem is different from the victim. And that's where this whole blame the victim claim, Imran, I want you to talk about this. The blame the victim claim, it presupposes a world where there's good guys and bad guys. In most cases, there isn't, right? There's blame to go on both sides. You know, what are your thoughts on that? This idea of blame the victim.
Blame the victim in what sense?
Victim blaming is victim blaming. You know, the claim that you're victim blaming. It's not victim blaming. It's looking at what is the source of the problem. Right.
Well, ultimately, it reflects a deeper sentiment in society where people are generally not wanting to reflect at their inherent problems, at their fundamental problems of thinking. When you see anyone who goes to therapy and you're seeing people, a therapist telling a patient, "Oh, you shouldn't feel guilt. why are you feeling, and they're treating this idea of, for example, guilt as a problem that needs to be solved, as a way that can be compartmentalized and put away in some dark recess of your mind, rather than addressing the fact that guilt is an act of action, or a call to action in your body. It's a response from your body telling you that, hey, how about you move into action, rather than what the way that it's playing out in society right now is that whichever irrational decisions you have as your form of thinking, just reinforce it with more ridiculous forms of thinking to make more erroneous conclusions. So it's become a game in fields like therapy and mental health, where you are constantly coming back to the therapist, giving them money and giving them all kinds of different things, because they're not addressing any of the inherent problems within your thinking,
Yeah.
and trying to solve those problems. So fundamentally, I don't believe in even the therapy game, the mental health game that's happening in this country. I do believe in therapy in a general sense, but not the way that it's being enacted in this country, where you're effectively just saying, giving people the license to act and behave in the most childish way possible,
Yeah.
and telling them, hey, there's no repercussions for how you do or how you behave. You're not at fault for the circumstances that you were born with. And yeah, in the general sense, you aren't at a fault, but you have to figure out how to navigate these difficult situations that many people are faced with, and how to put that into perspective. But ultimately, you have in Western societies a fundamental problem where the notion of self-correction, reflection, looking at in the past and looking at it as a way of learning from, and realizing where you made mistakes, where you should have zigged instead of zagged, and try to address the truth of the matter, instead of just kind of putting a nice
Yeah.
glossy finish over something terribly ugly. And it's just playing out on a sociological level and on state levels as well. So
I'm going to answer a question here from Yaki Baby, who is talking about, seems he's misunderstood something here. And for all those who are waiting for Paul Williams, he has an interview now that actually went over the time, so we swapped spots with Imran and Paul Williams. But in any event, what you're saying essentially is, by seemingly, it seems like the easy way out to not take responsibility and to place blame on somebody else and to validate all your feelings. Okay. Whereas taking what you end up doing with that is also stripping a person of willpower. So the more you put the blame on somebody else, the more you're actually not the actor anymore. Whereas when you put blame on yourself, right? Okay. When you put blame on yourself, you actually give your willpower, power.
Look at the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
How many of those women who were wrongfully treated by those men, but how many of those women put themselves in that position, especially in Hollywood, where anyone who is familiar with the Hollywood scene, even as a fan of Hollywood, you know that these actresses are oftentimes required to do horrible things to get the position that they do, and there many of them who agreed to these things. I'm not saying it was right. There's some self-reflection on that part, on their part, where they have to reflect and say, like, hey, I put myself in some terrible situations that I should not have, and that self-reflection rarely ever happens, and you see it play out, because it's going to be cyclical, and
it's going to repeat itself.
Yeah, it's going to repeat itself, because you haven't addressed the initial problem, where you're not being honest with how you have relationships with the opposite gender in Western society, and they just gloss over that, just same way as they gloss over the problems with alcohol in American society, where so many families and neighborhoods have been completely decimated by the problem of alcohol. But it's just something that, you know what, oh well, we all love it, so we're just going to keep it around. And these fundamental problems are a symptom of kufr. Like, just the one of the natures of kufr, of disbelief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not just kufr in itself, but how it manifests into different areas of society, of wider society, where it makes society not willing to address truthful problems, things that they just want to brush under the rug, instead of addressing and say, hey, you know what, just based on, forget about religion, what the Bible or any other religious text tells me, this problem is really bad in our society and we need to fix it. And they refuse to engage with the truth. And this is ultimately one of the biggest symptoms of Western societies, is that they're just unwilling to look at deep problems within their society and want to try to brush it under the rug or try to find some kind of patch to fix it.
Let me give you a simple scene. In our society today, if you see a black guy pummeling a guy and give him a complete bloody nose and two black eyes, right?
Yeah.
Immediately, who do you sympathize with?
The black guy.
Huh? The guy who
the guy who got beaten up.
The guy who got bloodied, right? The guy with the black eyes and the bloody nose.
Right.
All right, let's now rewind the tape a little more. Right? They're having an altercation with words. Then the victim, who's the victim later in the video, tells the guy he's having an altercation with, and he calls him the N-word. Oh, that explains it, right?
Yeah.
There's like fighting words. I don't even know if fighting words is a legal fiction or if it's real, but you know what I mean by that. It's a word that when you say it, you're inviting a fight, okay? It's a very charged word, and that person doesn't want to hear it. Now, do you look at the person in the same light anymore? Not at all. So this concept that anyone who appears to be a victim in your eyes, right, that we cannot rewind the tape and see, hold on a second, did you bring it upon yourself? It's a completely illogical idea. And there are thousands of examples. Anyone who has two kids know that kids pick up patterns real quick. And there's a hilarious video that went viral some while back of two kids, one older toddler and a younger toddler, okay? And they're fighting over a toy. They're playing with toys. One takes a toy, right? Then the other, it's amazing how quickly he learned. The younger kid jerks his head over and starts screaming and falls over. Immediately, the other kid gets in trouble, right? How amazing is our kids' capacity to learn how to get attention and how to manipulate, right? In this case, in that one case, it was a complete lie because the kid didn't get touched. He literally jerked himself over as if he got punched, right? But there could be genuine scenarios where one party completely gets physical and beats up another party. But if you had rewound the tape, you would have seen who instigated it with words, with other actions that you could do to make a person sort of, flip out on you. And in fact, if anything, if people want to look at the sinister, you want to look at Hamas in a sinister light, right? Like a clever light. They say like they knew that Israel would have, went ballistic on them. I've seen Jewish commentators say this, say that they knew Israel would go nuts on them. And so they said, let's change Israel's the perception of Israel by attacking them. We know that they're going to overdo the attack on the other side, right? So the concept of blaming the victim to me is one of those that just gets on my nerves because it's completely illogical. All right, let's Yaki baby, what are you saying? Yaki is he's an Arab Jew here, and he's saying, why in the Quran does it say, what is he? He's not Arab. Oh, okay. So he says that the Quran says whites are in paradise and blacks are in hell. What are you talking about? No.
The day that their faces will be dark.
Yes. Yawma taswaddu wujuhum. The ayah states that on that day of judgment, people who do good deeds, their faces will be brightened. Okay? And the people who did bad deeds, their faces will be darkened. Okay, blackened too. The literal meaning is what. But were all those people blacks on this earth and whites on this earth? No, has nothing to do with that, right? Has nothing to do with that. The bodies that you have on the day of judgment have nothing to do with the body that you have here. Okay, so I don't know what he's trying to gotcha moment. Okay, but it failed. Let's now turn to our the other topic that we had today. Omar, are we ready to put it up? Let's listen to what he has to say, and maybe pause it every minute or two just to see what Bishop Marmari Emmanuel has to say. Who is Marmari Emmanuel? He's an Australian-based Iraqi. They call themselves Assyrians, not Syrians, but Assyrians. Assyrians are essentially, you can switch to the screen now. Assyrians are essentially an ethnic people around Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey. So they're similar to the Kurds in that they're similar to the Kurds in that they were an ethnic group without a nation, essentially. But most of them, you'll find them in Iraq. And their commonality is the church. They have an Assyrian church. They're essentially Orthodox Christians. All right. They have a verse. There is an Assyrian Orthodox church in Paramus, New Jersey. Nobody knew or cared about the Assyrians until Patrick Bet-David made it a thing, because people do like him and like his podcast. And apparently there was some other guy who was famous in his world named George on there, and he actually spoke pretty well. I only listened to about 20 minutes of the podcast and the clip about this bishop, talking about the prophet and making mistakes, I would say, about the prophet, peace be upon him. This is one of the most popular priests because his comments on morality, gays, and, we got to say, he's got the brand down in terms of, you want to get a new brand, you want to have a Gandalfy look, he got the hood, he's got the stitched hood, right? The thobes, the robes, and the big beard. So he's got the dress up game down real well, right? Not to make fun of it. I'm not making fun of it because I like
a pretty nice beard.
Huh?
I mean, that's a nice beard.
It's a good beard. I mean, Madakia would not accept beyond the fist length, but others would. Okay, he's like elbow length at this point. But in any event, a lot of Muslims have similar length beards. But let's get to it, inshallah.
The law of God. We are nowhere near that perfection to do and abide by what God does. He showed that in the Old Testament, the Israelite nations. They failed him from the word go till the very end. Yeah. But he is the never failing God. His mercy that carries us, all of us as humans, regardless whether we are Christians or not. So when those religions out there, with all love and respect, they talk about laws, I'll ask them, are you fulfilling that law? Of course not. You're falling very short of that law. So don't tell me you have to do this where you are failing as a leader. Your prophet failed those laws. Your own prophet failed them.
Who?
Muhammad. And all the other leaders.
Such a reporter move.
And the very reason why Muhammad failed, because he's dead. Their book says that. But their book also says about my Messiah, even though the Isa in the Quran is not the Christ of.
How did the prophet fail the laws? What are you talking about? Right? Give us an instance in which the prophet did something forbidden in his own law. Right? That's number one. Number two, he failed because he died. So dying is failure. I don't understand what he's talking about. If you believe in Jesus being crucified, Moses died, Abraham died, Noah died. So that I didn't understand that point, what he was trying to make. Imran, did you understand what he's trying to say here?
I could not make heads or tails. I think Patrick Bet-David doesn't even understand what he's saying.
Yeah, because he is like,
he's nonsensical.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
Of the Holy Bible, totally separate people. We cannot claim something that is not truthful. I know truth hurts. I'm not offending people. I'm speaking the truth. And if it offends you, I'm really sorry not.
Okay, stop
I'm
right
not
there.
sorry for that.
All right, so the prophet, he's saying that their Jesus is not the same. We're not talking about the same person as what Muslims called Jesus, right? He's not saying anything about our understanding of who Jesus is. And frankly, I don't have much reason to care what he thinks. He thinks that they're two different people. He hasn't said anything about Islam at this point. He's simply saying, no, that Jesus is different. I'm not going to go chase him around and say, no, our Jesus is your Jesus, right? But as we understand it, there is only one character in the entire ancient history called Jesus. Right or wrong? Character meaning person in history, okay? There's only one person in history called Jesus, right? That is worth discussing, that anyone ever discusses. Imran, am I missing something here?
No, I think what you're saying, what he's saying is that because Jesus didn't die, he is a superior version of, or at least their interpretation of Jesus is the superior version, and that's why he is a living example.
So maybe he should say that our beliefs about Jesus are so radically different that it would be as if it's a different person. Like, for example, when we talk about Yaqub, Sayyidina Yaqub, in Islam, in the Quran versus in the Torah, the attributes are so different that it would be as if it's a different person, but we are talking about the same person. You know that Jacob in the Torah is non-stop lawyering and tricking God. And God keeps favoring him and favoring him. It is the most bizarre thing you're going to ever read. How is this someone am I supposed to look up to? He is non-stop in animosity with God, wrestling God, trying to trick God. It's the worst thing. When you read it and you realize, hold on a second. This is the first thing that you're teaching your kids? That's why they turn out like this. Right?
Yeah.
How are they going to turn out? That's why this lawyering around the law. All right, God said don't fish on Saturday. Put the nets on Friday. We got you. Right? No sense of God is essentially saying sacrifice money for that day. That's what he's saying. Right? No, let's try to trick God. Let's find another way. Let's can't use technology. Well, let's let the elevators all stop at every floor because we didn't technically press the button. Where is that? It originates with Jacob the trickster, the lawyer against God. There are very few good attributes. So I don't know what he's saying here, that it's not the same person. But anyway, he could believe that what he wants. My concern is, what is he going to say about Allah and his messenger and Islam, alayhi salatu wasalam, and the religion of Islam that's not correct? So far, he made a claim, but he didn't back it up. All right. And you know what? It's covered with the toughness. It's covered with the costume. Oh, yeah. The truth is the truth. Okay. Well, that's just smoke and mirrors, right? Yeah. Smoke and mirrors. It's a defense lawyer that doesn't have much evidence, right? But he's got good oratory skills. He's Johnny Cochran. You remember Johnny Cochran?
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
All right, keep playing.
But let me tell you one thing. Your book says that Isa, son of Mary, went up to heaven alive, and he will come back to judge the dead and the living. If I ask a Muslim, who judges?
Oh my gosh, what are you saying? All right, go.
They will say God. Well, you're telling me this prophet will judge. So which is which? Has the prophet taken the role of God? Has God gone on vacation and he's come and take his position? No. But Isa is the living Messiah. Even their book says. I speak Arabic. I read Arabic. I'm fluent in Arabic. When they say, Amma Isa ibn Maryam fahuwa kalimatullahi wa ruhan minhu. But Isa, son of Mary, Jesus, son of Mary, is the word of God and the spirit of God. Now, let me ask you, my dear Muslim, if you're claiming Isa is a prophet, then how come all the other prophets which you believe in Moses, you believe in Isaac, you believe in all the prophets of the Old Testament, how come none of the Old Testament prophets were referred to as the word of God, except Isa? Why?
Stop.
How?
Imran, you want to go first? Why don't you go first this time?
No, that's not my wheelhouse. You
okay, listen. Number one. What was the first thing that he said?
He said how they became judges.
Okay, Jesus, number one, comes down. He ascended and he comes down again. No one said he's going to judge between the creation. You're going to heaven, you're going to hell. Show me your good deeds, your bad deeds. Okay? Nobody said that. It's not said anywhere in the Quran that he says this. Okay? That he does this. So we believe God descends. Someone needs to clip this part out. We believe that God descends. We believe that Jesus descends. Okay. But he doesn't, but God judges. He's not the judge of anybody. The judgment doesn't even happen in this world.
All right.
The judgment happens in the afterlife. That's number one. Number two, God judges. Human beings judge, right? But they're different. Human beings judge with what God gave them. Human beings judge in a limited capacity. Okay? So yes, we could say Jesus will judge in the sense that he will judge Christianity to be true or false, Judaism to be true or false. What are the true stories versus the false stories? Is the prophet, he judge, meaning he will present to you the truth. That's in that meaning. Not judge you to heaven and hell. That's a position of God alone. That's number two. Go ahead, Ron.
I want to add something.
Yeah.
Also, I wonder what he thinks about like judges in courts and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
What about a judge in a court? When I go to a traffic court, when I go to any criminal court, goat court, for example, and the judge standing there, do I say that that's the attribute of God? No. Humans can judge. By the way, this is an oft-repeated thing. This is the second Orthodox Christian I've seen do this, right? So that's the second. Now, what was the third thing he just said? He just said that. What was the third thing he said? Kalimat. Why is he called the word? Number one, the Quran admits we have preferred, we have given some virtuous, some miraculous, some amazing things to some prophets and not to others, right? Moses spoke to God directly, even more than Jesus. Anytime that Moses wants to speak to Allah, he speaks to Allah, and Allah answers him with no hardship. Like the hardship of revelation is not there. Adam was chosen to be the first man. Ibrahim A.S. was chosen to be the first of the prophets, the father of all these prophets after the flood. Okay? Prophet Noah was chosen to live the longest of the prophets. Yusuf A.S. was chosen to have the most beautiful face, okay, and body and hair and everything. Prophet Dawood A.S. had the best worship. The Prophet, peace be upon him, didn't fast every other day. Prophet David did. The Prophet, peace be upon him, did not spend as much time in the night prayers as Prophet David, right? So Prophet David had that. He was a successful king who dominated other nations. No other prophet was a king who dominated other nations. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was the leader of Arabia, but never conquered other nations. The companions conquered other nations. Prophet Isa bin Maryam has such a unique place with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he is the reminder for human history, for a reminder for humanity of the power of Allah to create outside of the known so-called causes and effects. It was like a reminder. Human history, half the time of human history has passed, and you all need a reminder that Allah can create without the known causes and effects.
So what you're saying, Dr. Shadee, is he's referred to as the word
Be, and it is.
God of be.
Yes.
The commandment of be.
Yes.
Not because of him being the word, that of his speech being anything special, but because of Allah's speech being special.
Yes, he is the word of Allah of be, and it is. Just like Adam was created with no mother and father, Prophet Isa was created with a mother without a father, and Allah says be, kun. So where did the male ingredients come? Was created right there on the spot. It did not come through, all right, a series of males, a series of fathers, as the normal way which we understand to be normal. It's not normal with Allah. It means nothing to Allah. Allah can create human being in a myriad of different ways, however he wants. If he wants to create a human being out of a tree, he could have. If he wanted to create a human being from poof, he could have. Okay? None of that is difficult for Allah Ta'ala or rationally contradictory. So he is the word of Allah in the Quran, meaning that he is the word be, and it is. He has no father. That's the meaning of it. Now, let me ask you, just out of logic for the bishop, do you think that the Quran is going to have such a very basic contradiction and we're all going to miss it for all these years, and none of the companions picked it up, and none of the Syrian Christians and Iraqi Christians that the Muslims met in the first generation picked it up. But here you're going to come on the PBD podcast and give us a gotcha moment.
He figured it
I mean,
out.
think about this, right?
Yeah.
Next.
Also, like with the judging thing, aren't you judging us right now? You're saying the Muslims we're not
exactly.
saved, so you're judging us. So
That's
I guess
a judgment too.
Putting your logic to your God. And then also in the Quran, it says it doesn't say kalam Allah, right? It's kalimatullah.
Kalimatullah.
Kalim is mufrad.
Yes, it's singular.
It means kun. It doesn't mean kalam Allah like kalam.
Yeah, he's not the word of Allah, meaning the speech of God, which is pre-eternal with
That would be
himself.
kalam.
Yeah,
right?
that would be kalam. It's kalima. Okay, keep going. No.
How come all the prophets and every single human being on the face of this planet was born of an earthly father and an earthly mother, yet Jesus, son of Mary, was born in a virginal birth? Through a virginal birth, he has an earthly mother, but has no earthly father, for his Father who art in heaven. Why? This raises question marks. How come this man is different? His birth is different. His life is different. Even his end is different. He went up alive, and he will come back to judge. Because he is different. That's the whole story. He is different, my dear friend. You need to come and seek the true God with an open mind, open heart. Don't be fanatic about your faith. And I say this even to the Christians. The moment we become fanatics about our Christian faith, we've lost Christ. We've lost the true reflection of Christ. And you may say, well, I'm a bishop. I'm different maybe to some Christians that live in this blessed country of America, who are from a Protestant branch. I come dressed up like a Ninja Turtle. I call myself a walking tent. But how come a Protestant? How come other Christians? How come a Muslim? How come a Buddhist? How come an atheist is listening to this good-looking bishop? Why? Because the day you and I, dear Patrick, and all of us, the day we give our life to Christ, surrender to Him and say, Lord, it is no longer I but you. I know I'm weak. I'll fall short. I'll drift away. But please, Lord, even when I miss out, even when I walk away from you, I'm asking you now before it happens. When it happens, Lord, remember this moment when I called and I cried out to you, Lord, have mercy on me, I the sinner. Son of David, have mercy on me. When I pray, when I beg Him, when I cry out to Him, even if I fall short, He never fails, because He is the living God who was revealed in the flesh. He is the Logos, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and there is no one else. When Jesus Christ engulfs you and you surrender to Him and He takes over, you have no fear, because Jesus fears no one. If they say Jesus was weak, excuse me, who said to Herod, go and tell that fox? Who stood in front of authorities and called them the sons of the snake? Who said that? It was Jesus of Nazareth. Is that weakness? No, that is mightiness and power in its core. Why He was so powerful and blunt? Because His Father was Him. He gave His life. I'm talking about Jesus, the man, because the Son of God is God.
His Father was Him?
But the Son of Man,
the Son of God is God? Then why just call Him God?
The perfect man. This man was fearless.
There we go
Why?
again.
Because when this man gave his entire life to God, you fear nothing, you fear no one. Because when God is with you, who can be against you? I'll finish off with this. Jesus Christ, I not only believe in Him, dear Patrick, I know Him. Look, I'm a sinner.
Here we go.
I'm the weakest ever. Believe you me.
Popcorn.
I'm talking with my head placed under the sandals of the Lord, if He allows me, because His sandals are more pure than me. But I say this with absolute humility. The Lord Jesus revealed Himself to this piece of wreck.
Wow.
I don't speak about Jesus just because I believe I'm a Christian, or I dress up in this cloth, or I have read the Bible, which I have. No, I believe in the Lord and I know the Lord. He is 6'1", long face, tan skin, greenish eyes, browny, crispy hair split in the middle all the way to the shoulders with a very short beard. And after 2023 years, He is still 33 years of age and kicking baby. He is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Yesterday He is, today He is, and forevermore He is. He is the never-changing God who was revealed in the flesh over 2,000 years ago. And let me say this to the whole world. Yes, He came over 2,000 years through a virginal birth from our Holy Mother Mary, and He was crucified not he was sent up to heaven. No, he was crucified. He died in the flesh on the cross, and he was buried, but rose from the dead on the third day, ascended to heaven, and he's been sitting there at the right hand of the Father over 2,000 years ago.
Right
and he
hand of
will
himself?
come back again to judge the dead and the living, because he's not just a prophet, for he is God revealed in the flesh. This is the Jesus I talk about. That's why I fear no one. I fear nothing. I'm not here for people to love me. I'm here for Jesus to be pleased with this vessel that he uses for his glory and his glory only. He has showed me heaven and hell. And let me say this with love and humility. When you go to heaven, I can assure you, not because I'm a Christian, not because I'm a bishop, not because I believe in Jesus Christ, but I can assure you, in heaven Muhammad will not
podcast,
greet
not a
you.
sermon,
Buddha
Father.
will not greet you. Krishna will not greet you, because they will not. It will be only one who is the way, the truth, and the life. It will be Jesus Christ of Nazareth, who died for you and me. I'm inviting you to accept
So God
Jesus
died.
as Lord and Savior.
So God died.
Because there is no other way. If we don't have him, we are doomed forever. For in him, eternal life lies. When you go to heaven and you meet Jesus face to face, Patrick, you come back to earth. Who cares about a president, about Anthony Fauci, Klaus Schwab, George Soros, and the likes? Who cares? With all love and respect, because when I meet Jesus, I see everyone a piece of dust. What can a man do to me? Oh, they can kill me? Welcome, death. I thank the Lord for death, because the death became that vehicle that took me to my sweetheart, Jesus Christ. And then I can see him face to face. No more through a mirror, no more through a maze, no more through a dream, but I'm seeing him really face to face. Thank you, Lord, for allowing me to be killed for your sake. So if they want to kill me, I'm here. This face, once you see it, you can never miss it, my dear. So I fear nothing, for Jesus Christ is the only God. Not because I'm a Christian. Forget
All right,
about
pause,
Christianity.
because he's in sermon mode and we can't stop him, right? Huh?
This is all experiential. It's no
Listen, here we got a guy 2-3 years studying Islam and figured it out. Number one, there's two things. Your experience does not lend, your experience or claim of experience does not lend certainty outside yourself, right? It is not a claim of, it's not a truth claim. This is epistemology 101. No matter how wonderful your experience and how much you believe it happened to you, it's not an evidence. It's not a piece of evidence, okay? So that's number one. Number two, there is something called the law of non-contradiction, okay? The law of non-contradiction states that a statement, right, as it is, cannot contradict another statement in your passage, in your speech, whatever you're saying. So how is Jesus sitting next to the Father? That's two different entities, okay? How did he die? Then therefore God died. Can you say the word God died? No, God didn't die, but you just said Jesus died, okay? You just claimed him that his Father is God, and he's the Son of God. Therefore, he's not God. It's the same thing for 2,000 years. Whatever they did at the Council of Nicaea, they sat there having meetings for a year, and they came up with this. Clear law of non-contradiction. Apply that to any walk of life, you'll fail. Apply the law of non-contradiction to any walk of life. Anything that you do. It will end up being a ball of yarn, like pasta, all mangled up together. Nothing will make sense. That's all I have to say. His speech, wonderful. Great elocution, great emotion, wonderful. All that's great. Holding the cross, having the outfit. He's a great speaker. I give him all that. And I can feel his conviction. But I have a brain. And Islam says have a brain. It's all experience. You're only talking, I had this experience. I met Jesus. Okay, so my faith is going to rest upon your experience? No. And when you do, quote, talk theology and talk about God, you're contradicting yourself. Not just him. Every person who speaks of the Trinity ends up in the very same basic thing, basic mistake, right? That no human being can accept. Continue. Tire Talk says this is not transformative.
Should I put it at high speed?
Huh?
Should I put it at high speed?
Yeah, put it on high speed.
Focus on Christ. Just like Mahatma Gandhi, when the British ruled and enslaved the Indians. He looked at the picture of the crucified Jesus. He said, you know what, take away the Christians, but give me the Christ, because Christ wouldn't have done what these Christians would have done. Today, Christianity and Christians are not reflecting the true Christ. But the moment any Christian reflects the true Christ, you draw the whole world to you. Why don't we look at that? As I mentioned, all glory to the Lord. How come this odd-looking person in America with this outfit, how come people are listening to him? Because
Stop praising
when you let
yourself. No
Christ
one's
speak-
listening to you.
Oh,
I
Holy
mean, I'm
Spirit
the
can
first time
penetrate
listening
any
to
heart
you.
and any mind and any
Right?
soul. No one
What
can
the
stop God,
heck?
for He is the supreme authority.
You know, I would say I think that was powerful when you say Fauci and
That's
Klaus
their
Schwab.
scholar.
They would probably want to know if everybody in heaven is vaccinated. That's what they would want
That's
to
their
know.
number one.
It's very important. It's very, very
They are
important.
vaccinated by the blood of the Lamb of God. This is the
He has bars on you guys.
Yeah, he
bro.
does.
Yeah, I
I think
couldn't
they want
believe
to
it.
know if you know everyone's vaccinated to make sure they're safe. It would be very important for everyone to be wearing masks in heaven.
No. They will not shut this mouth with a mask. Let me tell you, my dear friend, the only one who can shut this mouth is Jesus Christ, who gave this mouth. The only one who gave me this tongue is the one who's going to take it away, no one else. So until the day Jesus calls it the day for this piece of wreck, you are nothing. I am nothing. All of us are nothing. Jesus, I'm inviting you, Klaus Schwab, to come back to the Lord. Because let me tell you one thing, all of us, we will die one day. No matter what you do, how rich you are, and you may conquer the world. Where is Augustus Caesar? Where are the pharaohs? Where are the Assyrian kings? Where are the Macedonian Empire? Where is the Roman Empire? Where is the Persian and the Medite Empire? Where are they? Gone with the wind. Never seen. But where is Christ? Sitting at the right hand of the Father, and still conquering, and still ruling. And there are millions of people coming to Christ as we speak.
Pause,
Now,
Imran.
this to me is power.
Your thoughts.
This is what
Yeah, no, at least
it.
the guy, Christians in general
What happens?
haven't yet responded to the verse from Matthew, my Lord, why have you forsaken me? They have no response to simple statements like that, where Prophet Isa is clearly separating, delineating himself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a basic, problems within Christianity, even in their eschatology, about them talking about Jesus coming down from heaven and judging between us. It's not. It shows how disconnected their end times is, their eschatology.
Oh, you got muted. You hit the mute button. No, you hit the mute button. Imran muted it yourself.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you hear me at all or no?
Yeah, now I hear you. I heard you basically saying the verses where Jesus talks to God. How does God talk to himself? How are you God and then talking to God?
And then their eschatology is completely disconnected as well, about Jesus coming down from heaven and judging between people. And when you at least learn Islamic eschatology, and you learn about how things play out towards the end of time, leading to the day of judgment, there's so much chronology associated with it. We understand a basic framework about how things are going to play out the way they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And in Christianity, it's just like here and there. There's a time where people get pulled up and go to heaven, and what was that moment called? I can't remember what. But anyway,
The rapture.
The rapture.
Yeah.
There's all these disconnected events related to their end times, and somehow in between that, people are going to be judges as well. So it doesn't make sense to me.
So and also, the Protestant and Catholic versions of things are so different.
Yeah.
Ali Attai talks about that. Dr. Ali Attai talked about that the other day, that the rapture is something that is I don't think they have that in Catholicism. Right? They don't have that in Catholicism. They only have God. They have God, Jesus coming back, and then ruling for. He said that the great period of time of Jesus is now, and it means that we all have access to Christ.
Right.
That's what they say.
Dr. Shadee, I don't know if you saw that one Joe Rogan episode where he brought on this apologist or some form of rational approach to Christianity. And this guy, he was like supposed to be the all end all, like an expert on how to get or refute atheists or people who are interested in refuting Christianity.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, Rogan asks him towards like the middle of the interview, where he's keep going on and on. He's like, so explain to me how you would prove to me that there is Jesus. And he's like, oh, it's my own personal like experience,
Yeah.
and it boggles my mind because as a scientist, he's trying to explain all these proofs of existence of God and this theory related to all the interconnected nature of the universe, which of course we all as Muslims believe in as well. But he's going into all this stuff, but he can't explain Jesus's existence or even their foundational creed related to Christianity, except by going to his own personal experience.
Yeah.
Which and Rogan's like left like speechless. Like, how am I supposed to respond to your own anecdotal experiences?
Yeah.
So it was just a fascinating, like how even the most intelligent people who come onto major platforms like PBD and Joe Rogan, they can't answer these fundamental questions
Yep.
related to their belief.
I think the whole issue is far simpler than we imagine. Whoever it was, Constantine, said we need to, the empire needs to be Christian. There are too many different Christian groups. Bring them all in for the Council of Nicaea. Council of Nicaea, they spent a couple months chit-chatting, talking, having big meetings. I used to think it was like one big meeting, but it was over the course of a year. All these different priests and bishops come together to finalize the creed, right? I think that they argued so much and the time ran out that they just had to put something together. And Constantine got fed up, said, I need the creed right now, right? And then they just put it together and made no sense. And I don't think any of them were convinced of it, right?
Yeah.
Until today, this is the most basic thing. You know why the Catholic Church has survived, the Protestant Church has survived? Because there's some good things that they believe in. Believe in the whole family values and all that stuff is very nice, right? That's what will keep your society going. Your family and moral values. No matter what you believe about God and afterlife, if you, in general, avoid fornication and you believe in respecting your parents and marriage, you will have numbers. Just basic math, right? And if you tend not to get involved in usury, that's probably an added benefit because you need money to survive, right? And once you become a slave to a usurious system, you eventually become poorer and poorer and poorer and poorer. So that's why Catholicism survived. Survived because of the excellent moral, I have to say, leaving out the priests, but the regular people, right? Down in Italy and all those places, they had big families. They didn't go into zina and all those things in general. And they believed in those morals. That's why your society flourished, right? Not because it was true, right? Because if it were true, you would also succeed against the philosophers, which they didn't, right? Theologically, with arguments and back and forth. So that's what I actually think is the whole history of Christianity in a nutshell. I mean, when it comes to the Trinity, I would wish I could have a debate with this man, because he's very good at the rhetoric, right? But that's it. After that, the actual nuts and bolts of truth, of metaphysics, of kalam is a zero.
And
I never watched David Wood, but I heard he's trash.
And the guy who was on Joe Rogan, his name is Stephen Meyer, Stephen. Meyer. I'd encourage you guys to check it out because it shows you how incredibly blessed we as Muslims are with incredibly coherent, connected arguments where you have a logical and rational worldview and a way to totally make Islam make sense to anyone.
Yeah.
And how much difficulty he has as he stumbles through that interview. There are some really intelligent stuff that he talks about, but when he's challenged on it and pressed on it, you realize how incredibly blessed we are as Muslims with incredible people like Hamza Sources or Muhammad Hijab and etc. All the brothers all across the world who are studying this stuff. Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, just doing fantastic jobs all over the place. We're so blessed. I could never imagine a Muslim coming on that show and getting stumped like the way this guy did.
Listen, can a khatib, if a khatib in a masjid, in a mosque, goes up on Friday and ascends onto the pulpit or the minbar, and he says that I have something to tell you all, Allah spoke to me last night, he would not finish the khutbah. We will pull him down from that khutbah so fast. Okay? If he got up there and said, listen, everybody, I need you to do something, the Prophet spoke to me, we would pull him off that minbar so quickly, not because we don't think it's possible. It is very possible for the Prophet to come to a person in a dream. It is even Imam Ahmad said, I saw Allah in a dream. Allah spoke to me in a dream. Fine. But this is not an argument and evidence. It's for you only. It's not an evidence, right? That you can, in that case, everyone would be hoodwinking everybody else, right? All right, you don't have a proof? Yes, I do. God told me. I need you to do this for me. Where is that in the book? That I need to do this for you. You're my teacher and everything. I love you, but who says I have to come and wash your car every Saturday morning? God said, right? Who said I have to give $5,000 in the bin, in the charity box? God told me that you need to do it. We'd have charlatans everywhere if the public was abused with the leaders saying God told me. No, the public obeys their leadership or follows their leadership when the leadership brings them objective evidence in a book that we could all see. Okay? Don't care about your dreams. Right? With all due respect to everyone who has dreams. When we sit and we talk about the law and the community and what's right, true and false, what's right and wrong to do and not to do, give me the law in a book that you can point to this verse, this scholar and that scholar, interpret it. This is the Arabic language, boom. Then I can relax. I believe it's the truth. And I'm not being hoodwinked and following a personality. Imran, do you want to see the rest of what?
I'm okay, unless I think you saw the whole thing. Is there anything worthy?
Is there any? Are there any other timestamps where he talks about the Prophet? He didn't even talk about the Prophet. He said your Prophet didn't follow your law, and he gave no examples. Maybe in his own personal time he could give examples. Let's debate that, right? I'd love to bring it up. Maybe he had more dreams. Maybe we should get him Rabbi Mizrahi, right? Who condemns all these dreams. Okay, here you go. And Mizrahi was right? And he said they're still having dreams till today, and he's right? Visions and dreams. That's the basis of your faith. How about logic? How about reason, revelation? Something that I could look at with my own two eyes and be convinced of. Imran, talk to us.
No, fundamentally, I agree. When you make any kind of argument or any kind of a discussion point, when you're going off of anecdotal experiences, dreams, or whatever, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I feel bad for Christians when they're talking like this. It's so sad because you're feeling embarrassed for them, because it's not just that they're hurting themselves, but they're hurting all of theists, especially because they talk like this to atheists. And you know how the atheists do. They take that example and they blast it all over and blame all the theistic religions about with these nonsensical arguments that the Christians use. So fundamentally, these guys are doing such a disservice, not just to their own religion, but just the entire belief in God.
Yep.
They're the example. They're almost like the how the woke left is kind of this weird extreme category of leftist people.
Yeah.
And that they always have to come in and say, oh, they're ruining our argument. So it's similar in that respect. So
small demons don't like Christians. The small demons, they don't like the name God and Jesus. In however you put it in a sentence. They cannot stand the utterance of the name God, Jesus, Michael, Moses, David, Gabriel. The name itself drives them away.
yeah.
Okay? However, and this is totally talking within the sphere of Islam here. This is not an interfaith dialogue anymore. Okay? The larger demons, they love Christianity. Why? Because it's a beautiful setup for atheism, right? It's a perfect setup for atheism. It's a fastball down the middle. It looks impressive, right? When you see the ball go by once, twice, oh, I know this thing. It's got so many intercontradictions on the inside. And ultimately, it will not succeed. In a world where it's not propped up by a government, where atheist philosophers can roam free, they decimate the Christian theology. And that will force the Christian to lean more on emotion than anything else. right? Because they lost the battle of reason. They have to go on emotion. The larger Satans, they love these false religions, okay? Because as you said, it's a terrible representation of theism. So atheism then is the next level of Iblis, okay? Atheists are the next level. But guess what? Atheism is not the end goal of Iblis. It is a necessary pit stop, okay? He needs them so much, right, to eliminate all mention of God. But remember, Iblis, the final plan of Dajjal and Iblis is not no God. It's him as God. So you do need to have a belief. And what's the game plan? Keep society atheist for long enough. They'll feel a void. We have already discredited the theists. Okay? Thanks to the Christians. Okay? We've already discredited them. And then people lump Islam with the Christians, at least in the Western world. Once people have such a void inside of themselves, they're going to need something. Then we'll bring out our false Messiah. And then Iblis will be worshipped again through the Dajjal. The Dajjal comes in and he brings you what your mind cannot interpret or understand or make any sense of it. That's the end result of where we're headed here. We're not headed to an atheist world. Atheism is the setup. Just like I say, clean this table. We having guests over, clear the table and polish it, right? So clear it of all mention of God, Jesus, Moses, Abraham, Muhammad, clear it all of any belief so that we could set it with our own beliefs. That's the end result.
And to further clarify that, Dr. Shadee, I think it's a setup to worship your own desires.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, because man has two inclinations, and fundamentally, when you look at human beings and what they're capable of, or their decision making, that ultimately you could become a slave just to your desires and live your life according to the whims that your desire is taking you, without the restriction of any kind of moral code. And they talk about moral code, but we see how the moral interpretation in the West has become.
Yep.
There's a reason why Nietzsche and them said that God is dead, and because they said that your moral code is basically it's what you want it to be.
Yep.
Ultimately, that's what. And there's only a few societal restrictions on a few things left, maybe like incest and a few other things, but very few things that are preventing you from acting and behaving like an animal.
I don't see that incest is far off.
It's not.
Maybe 10 years. Be normalized.
Especially if it's between. Well, right now it's allowed between consenting adults, right? I don't think there's any law prohibiting consent.
Yeah, I think all we're waiting for now is that speaking against it will become a some kind of hate crime.
Yeah.
Right. That it'll be popular. That'll be something out there. Like, what's to stop it? And I saw an argument, a debate, and someone said, well, biology would stop it because people with incestuous relationships, it's a man and a brother and a sister, likely their child will have some kind of birth defect. But the counter response was, what happens if a blind man falls in love with a blind woman? Should we disallow that marriage too? Because the genetic chances of their child being blind is very high, right? So what are we going to do with that? And what happens if they choose not to have kids? And what happens if they're of the same sex, right? Even more, they're impossible to have kids, right? So there's a lot. They've already done all the arguments. They've already been through it all. It's just a matter of time. Okay. Uga Panda saying there's already a game about incest. It got positive review. Do you hear about this, Imran?
No, I have not heard about this. Where is this a video game?
Hey, Uga, tell us, is this a video game or is this like one of these? I don't even know. By the way, don't search it up. I saw a crazy article the other day about people whose digital lives have been destroyed. Even their employment has been destroyed. Okay. The police showed up to a workplace and arrested a woman Why? While that woman was bathing her son, you know what people do, sending pictures back and forth, right, of her son. Her, you know, like taking a bath. Probably sending it to her sister or something totally innocent. At some point, one of the other kids was playing around with her phone, uploaded it to Facebook, right?
Oh.
Immediately, Google, Facebook, all these algorithms kicked in. That's child pornography. And the algorithm doesn't differentiate, doesn't know context. So it shut down all of her Google accounts and her Facebook accounts. And then authorities were notified, and authorities showed up at her workplace. How insane is that? So be careful. You got to be super careful. Anything with children.
Yeah.
All right.
So they said the Sims 4 update accidentally enabled incest.
Insane.
So yeah, the Sims is
What is that, Imran?
It's a simulation of like you can make a family from its basic unit, and I think you can. It's kind of like a role playing type game. There's no end to it. You're just kind of building your family and by extension the society. I think. Like I haven't played through the whole game, but I kind of know just a brief overview of it. But it's a very popular game that was out since the early days of the computers, and or at least the modern computers in 1998 and stuff. So.
All right, talk to me. Tell me about your world in Chicago, your activity online, your reactions to the forays that you got into debating Zionists and all that.
Well, fun. Right now, we're not in debating Zionists in particular, but what we've been doing, at least, is talking to Muslims in general about why we're in this situation that we are, and fundamentally what Zionists have identified within each and every Muslim, on whether on an individual level or on a state level or a societal level, how they've entrenched themselves into controlling our actions. So why do Muslim state actors not do anything for the defense of Palestinians, right? And the Zionists have created a reward system essentially for Muslim countries to not act on the behalf of Palestinians, but furthermore to behave in their own self-interest. And this is something that is a fundamental characteristic of what neoliberal capitalism is in modern society, is that you act in a manner that pursues your own self-interest. This is what the world order, at least among all the countries in the world and how they operate among each other, is that there's this mutual understanding that, hey, we're going to act in the interests of ourselves. So when we offer you something, we know that you're not out to further a different type of ideological agenda. You're not out there to push communism or Islam or any kind of other ideology, at least on a state level. They're not interested in that. So they need people who they can negotiate with, who they can have agreements with, and make geopolitical treaties with, so that they can further their economies and other economy, or the trading partners' economy as well. And so the Zionists have seen this as a way to kind of choke any kind of resistance in the Muslim world on a state level. But furthermore, they've also taken the additional steps to control us through our fear of losing our job on an individual level, where they've identified that, hey, these people are really attached to their money. Like fundamentally, human beings will naturally, if as put aside Islam, but you're going to be attached to your wealth and you want to survive. So they've identified that this characteristic is a way where we can control people's ability to speak. So that this is why there's so many Twitter accounts out there and all kinds of different Jewish activists or Zionist activists rather, who are investigating where people work and try to figure out how they can target those people's workplaces and make them shut up, so that they tone down the activism. So fundamentally, as Muslims, we already have these tools to remove ourselves so that we don't fear their oppression, that we can say what we want. And it only requires us to remove our love of wealth, that we surrender our being and our future and every kind of false God that we made in our mind related to wealth, money, status, power, and we relinquish that, and we say, eventually on one day when we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He asks us about a situation like this, where we say, "Oh Allah, I've left everything on the table for you," and you're in prostration, and you said, you look at my heart, and I was willing to throw every single desire, every ambition I had in my personal life away for Gaza. And this is how they've maintained a choke on us, because we, as much as we want to hope and admit that, as much as we want to hope that Muslims are above the idea of greed, wealth, status, power, these things have entrenched ourselves in our wider Muslim society, and we have to break free of these things. And ultimately, we have to be able to sacrifice, because no nation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was ever given victory before sacrifice. This notion that oh, I'm going to sacrifice nothing is something alien to the tradition of Muslims, that we have to be willing to sacrifice something. Even it doesn't mean that you go and put yourself in a situation where you're hurting yourself. No, but you have to imagine yourself like, if this push comes to shove, will I still stand by the Palestinians? Or will I still stand by Gaza if I was confronted with the prospect of losing my job? You have to be willing to say, it blows my mind when you see a Muslim scholar who has over 10 million followers, and you search his Twitter feed and you can't find Zionism or Israel even mentioned. That's not acceptable to me anymore, Dr. Shadee. I can't imagine someone with that level of influence who can change the movement and the currents of Muslim climate not even mention.
Oh, you went mute again. You hit the mute button. Last thing you talked about is
Go ahead.
supposedly or actually influential people who do no inkar.
Yeah, there's a person out there. I'm not going to throw him out under the bus on your show, but he's got over 10 million followers on Twitter, and he's got an incredible level of influence that can change the direction of Muslim sentiment. This is just on Twitter.
So he's a Muslim, obviously.
He's a Muslim scholar, and at least a very well-known personality within religious spaces, and he has this level of influence that transcends the nation-state borders that we have. Every corner of the world knows of this person, and he hasn't yet mentioned who is to blame for the criminality and the genocide that's being committed on the people of Gaza. You search his Twitter feed, there's no mention of who it is. And it'd be one thing, Dr. Shadee, that if this brother was in a Muslim country like Saudi Arabia or some repressive country where there is, direct consequences for his speech related to this, I would understand that. I would say, okay, you know what? At least you're doing your best. He's in another country and wants the best of both worlds. Is making dua for Palestine and Gaza, and saying it's horrible what's happening. To me, when these duas and prayers and stuff, these are the default attitudes every Muslim should have. This is what my 10-year-old son, or 12-year-old son, is making dua for, because he has no ability. This is the default thing that we all should be doing. It's not that it's not important or anything, but it's something that's the basic thing. But when you as a leader aren't able to go beyond that, it shows to me that how much level of sacrifice you're willing to commit, because you don't want to fall out of favor. Because we all know the truth. Many of these brothers get invited to major speeches and conferences in all kinds of different countries, and they rationalize to themselves and they say, oh well, what benefit am I going to do if I get banned from this country? Oh, who am I benefiting if happens to me and that happens to me? And what do? They start turning down the knobs and become quiet and and unwilling to talk about what needs to be said, because right now we're at this critical moment in history where all hands are on deck. Every single child, whether it's a child or an adult, everyone who has an ability to do something has to do something, and there's no other way to go about it.
Everyone in the studio is looking who has 10 million followers now. Okay. Now,
It's pretty
now
obvious.
listen up.
I can say it if you don't care.
No, I don't mind.
Yo, you don't mind? Oh, this
I don't
is
mind. It's
this
public,
is-
right? Yeah.
Yeah. This is public. This is none other than Mufti Menk.
Okay, you guys got it right. They researched it. They got it right. But listen, message to Mufti Menk. I tell you what, one of the Syrian scholars, I think, I believe Sheikh Mujir al-Khatib, sent us a message early on. Every one of you who is making dua for Philistine and not making dua against those who are killing the kids of Philistine, you are also part of the problem, because you're only trying to play it, look at what is good in the world, making dua for people, all wonderful, but you refuse to stop the evil of the world. So you're allowing the evil to continue, right? There's no concept of displacement here, like a dirty tub of water, keep putting good water in, the dirty water comes out. No, you must, in Islam, make an inkar of the munkar, which is basically, now when can you not? The examples you said. I'm in a state, I'm in a country, we got treaties with this other country, you can't talk against them. I can't rile up the Muslims against that country. The ruler will cut my neck off. You know what I would say? Stay silent. It's better, right, than saying half-truths. But it is an obligation to negate and to clarify to everyone what's evil as well, right? People tend not to like that. They think it's abrasive, but Allah knows best, right? Allah knows best when he says in the Shahada that we say, there is no God, none worthy of worship except Allah. So negation before affirmation. You must actually point out what's evil too. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he has an amazing thing on the tricks of shaitan. And one of the tricks of shaitan is that he loves to mingle with the truth a little bit of falsehood, right? And silence is a saying. Some people attribute it as a hadith, others saying, that it's not a hadith, it's a saying of the wise people of the ummah, etc. Namely that as-sakitu an al-haq shaytanun akhras. Silence from the truth is a false devil. So maybe, does Mufti Menk have some kind of deals with Zionists of some sort or other Muslims that part of the deal is, listen, just stay silent with that? Then I would say, listen, what's your point as a preacher? Is it not to clarify the truth? Why don't you make your money somewhere else? Buy homes, sell cars, right? Be a real estate guy, okay?
Yeah.
He graduated from Mufti school, yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Salafi Mufti. Go ahead. But Imran, you make a great point.
Yeah.
Where is the negation of the wrong? You cannot just say, hey, this is the truth, this is the truth, this is the truth. Where's the falsehood so I can avoid it?
Exactly.
I mean, I despise this fluffy attitude. And again, I am recognizing that there may be a moment in time where you're compromised. But certain things, the compromise is too much. Like if let's say a masjid happens, some bad happens in a mosque, right? But my best friend is the imam of that mosque, hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
What happens in that mosque is of this little small amount of significance in the world, right? But Gaza is the most significant thing happening in the world today. If you're compromised on that, then you're not a good deal maker then, right?
Dr. Shadee, there's a bunch of people in the chat who are confused. I specifically said Mufti Menk made no mention of Israel throughout his Twitter feed or Zionism. There's no mention. There's no mention of that. Now, so yes, he is making dua for the Palestinians and Gaza and stuff like that, but there is no mention. If you can actually search through their feed when you go on your phone and open up the app, you find his account. Do a search on there, you will find zero results over there, and I find that incredibly deplorable. That a leader with the status that he has or the following that he has built and amassed over the years, based on small, simple parables and examples, and simple things that he did. Okay, you know what? There's many things you could have taken a stand on back then. Forgiven. You didn't say a lot when we needed you to say a lot for many years. But this is one moment where every single Muslim leader has to be speaking about directly about the Zionism, the Zionists and the Israelis,
Yeah.
and their entrenchment in the wider Muslim world.
I don't know how you can be a leader if you cannot name what is bad for us. Who is a wrongdoer? You got to name these things, and it can't possibly be that you are compromised to the degree that you can't even utter the name, right? So where are we? Where's our sacrifice level? And okay, Zimbabwe, that's where he's from.
Yeah.
I don't know if they got deals with Israel. I don't think Israel has worried about Zimbabwe
Zimbabwe is very much connected with Mohammed bin Salman, and Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, is very keen on distancing the Islamic or Muslim sentiment towards Palestine and Gaza, because it impedes on them making deals with Israel, and they have many different ambitions related to making normalization agreements with the Zionist entity of Israel. And fundamentally, it speaks volumes, because you're seeing other people who are kind of mildly associated with the kingdom be backing down and making sure that they don't say anything so offensive that they won't be allowed into
back into Saudi. So it's ties with Saudi that can disallows him from talking so much against the Zionists.
And you see in his Twitter feed, there is a picture of the Zimbabwean president meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, and he retweets it. For what? I'm like, okay, what did you need to do? Like, you need to give homage to this meeting that's happening between the Zimbabwean president and Mohammed bin Salman. It was just the most oddest retweet that is happening.
Yeah.
Almost like as if he's saying that, hey, I am on board, or at least endorsing this relationship in some capacity, and it's a blessed meeting or of some sort, because it just seems so odd that a Islamic preacher would be retweeting a vile meeting of that sort. Someone who is an open enemy of Islam, who has no problem inviting deplorable singers and performers to the Holy Land, and it makes no sense why someone would do that, other than that he has some sort of agreement with, or some sort of ability to make have some kind of benefit with Saudi Arabia. Maybe in a
listen, put it this way very briefly. You're a mufti who's done so much for the ummah. We all know that. The fact that you can't speak against, the Zionists, it's shameful. I would say it's wrong, but that's the action. As for your reason for taking that action, I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you got caught up with some group of people that disallow you to talk about that. Your family may be harmed. So there's one thing about pointing out the action is terrible. Why did you commit that action? Well, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, right? To be on the safe side, maybe there's some situation there. And that's how we clarify acts versus judging the person. Can't judge the person if I don't know his whole history and I don't know his whole situation, but I can judge the action. Okay? We can definitely judge the action. So that's why we're not turning against him. We're clarifying what's actually incorrect, that, if possible, that he could fix. Okay? It's the actions. Your public actions can always be measured on a scale of right and wrong. Why you did them, that's a whole different story. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself said, Adam disobeyed his Lord, and in another, he says, he forgot. So Allah gave almost gave him an excuse. But he didn't forego the action. Asa Adam rabbahu. Adam, he disobeyed his God, his Lord. He ate from the tree. But in another, he says, fanasi. Adam forgot. Okay? So the action is wrong. As for why you did it, that I can't pass a judgment on you. But we can say that if you're a scholar, if you're an imam of the ummah, we sort of expect you to be pretty clear on the issue of Gaza and the issue of the Zionists. 10 million people look up to you, probably more than any other English-speaking imam.
That's just on Twitter. I mean, imagine his Facebook and Instagram. I mean, all these other. You're effectively talking about entire large populations of large countries. That's the amount of influence you have.
Listen, the lobby runs real deep. How about this? $3.3 billion in the year 2022. That's $9 million a day. Taxpayers' money. In an hour, we've been streaming here for over an hour. $375,000 in a single hour. Every single hour. Every single time the big hand hits a 12, $375,000. $6,250 a minute. $105 a second. Okay. What's the defense? What's the reaction to this? The response to this is that it's not going in cash being wired over to Israel. Not all of it. What is it being, how is that money going over? It's going over by the government contracting American weapons producers and other producers of products, and then the product going out. So they argue that you're just recycling American money. It's going from the taxpayer to those companies who then go and get paid and, buy things from Walmart and stuff like that. So the money just gets recycled. That's the defense. But this is why also some Republicans are fanatical Zionists, because they know that the contract they have with the U.S. government is only due to the Zionist or Israel's request of that government. So once you're so intertwined financially, it tells me this lobby and this government and this country they cannot be pulled apart very easily. Right? It's going to take a lot of force to pull them apart. And who's going to be the force? I think it's going to be America First, an America First movement. And right now, it's led by commonsensical people, but the leaders are sort of far right-wing guys, right? But commonsensical people are waking up to this. It's like, hold on, we got some serious problems here in this very country. So why are we actually sending more and more money? And this is catching on, and it's a big problem for the lobby. The lobby has to shut down America First personalities. They have to.
Yeah, totally agree. I think people like Candace Owens and Jake Shields on Twitter, who are part of this movement, and I think that it's great that we're engaging with them, and we have to also be careful, because America First can also turn into some kind of, I think there are some undertones of white nationalism in there, and
that's the problem. Yep, 100%.
So I'm worried about just the same problem as Muslims were aligning with the left, that we have to be careful about our relationships with the right as well. There are some fantastic things that these individuals are bringing about, and what I'm heartened to see, at least, is that they are critical thinkers, that you can at least have a good discussion with them, where you can give them dawah without the fear or worry that they're going to be upset about any kind of messaging that you give them. You don't have to really hold back when you're talking to them. They're very blunt speakers, and I really enjoy that about their dialogue.
Yeah, that's why they don't get triggered. They don't have these triggered things where they make themselves victims and go cry about you on Twitter and all that stuff. So they're, I would say, an adversary, an enemy in some cases, that I actually find easy to deal with. Yeah. It's like an old school bully, an old school enemy, rather than this new version of things where one little word and they're going to cry victim and then post all about you and try to cancel you and dox you and all this. It gets emotional. Essentially, it goes from logos, from reason. I like to argue with someone through reason, and not through pathos, which is just pure emotion. I can't deal with those people. So
It's troubling. It's troubling the nationalist sentiment that's happening throughout Europe and the United States, because these people have benefited the most from taking the cream of Muslim societies. They're taking our doctors, engineers, the most intelligent individuals, not people who were just born in the West and studied through their programs, but people who are actually part of uh, prestigious institutions of the Muslim world, and they came and practiced all kinds of different sciences all across their countries and benefited greatly from our fruits, our cream. And now they are talking about the crimes of isolated individual. I think there was one in Ireland last week, I think, who
Yep.
killed a child or something. And these are being used as a way to drum up anti-Semitic or anti-immigrant sentiment among their native populations. I think Conor McGregor was one who had tweeted out against it and was saying what's happening to our countries and stuff. And then they go out, those same people who are these nationalists in Ireland, they go out and riot and go haywire, leveling or causing all kinds of destruction in their own cities. That they traditionally they would say, oh, look at those savage immigrants destroying our cities and rioting and looting. And what do you see now? You saw, before they could even get to that, their own nationalist hooligans came out on the street upset about what happened in Ireland, and they did the very same thing. The argument was
it
taken
was
out
almost laughable.
under their feet before they could even make it.
Yeah.
It's funny in that sense.
There got a question here from Jacob. Jacob the learner. What kind of picture does he have there? I'm not even going to click on that. Does the Quran say that us Jews who come to Islam are special? The Prophet, peace be upon him, said they have two rewards. They have the reward of having been Jews, then of being Jews, but then practicing it correctly. And the correct practice of Judaism is to accept Jesus, then accept the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you have the reward of sincerely practicing the faith that you were upon. Not to say that that faith wasn't correct, but you received the same message, okay, or the message of the Prophet, and accepted it. So that's why the Prophet said you have two rewards. So the sincere and correct way of practicing Judaism and Christianity is to accept and trade it away almost. That's not the right expression, but put a pause on that, stop that completely, and accept the new message. And that's how you get the reward of both. Okay, that's the answer to that. Surely those who believe and those who are Jews and Sabians and Christians and those who are Magians and who associate others with Allah, surely Allah will decide between them on the last day. So a lot of those verses that would make it seem that God is accepting of Judaism is of the Jews in the time before Jesus. From Jacob all the way to Jesus. Right when Jesus comes, everybody has to believe in him. If you don't believe in Jesus as a Jew, then you're rejected by God and not acceptable. You must believe in this major prophet and messenger. Now you accept Jesus. Okay, Jesus came and he kept the Moses' law. Then he brought the Gospels. You follow that all the way until the Prophet Muhammad comes. All right, now you have to follow that. Why? Because humans change, times change, laws change. The truth about God and angels and afterlife is always the same, but the laws change, and you have to follow every next prophet. So Jacob, what you should do is recognize Jesus exists. If you're a Jew, recognize Jesus was a true messenger of God, born from the Virgin Mary. And then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the last and final messenger. Okay, and then you will have gotten the reward of your previous belief. Okay, so that's what I recommend you do. And how does someone convert? You say, I bear witness that there's none worthy of worship but Allah, and that Muhammad is his last and final messenger. That's it. Do I need witnesses? Witnesses is for the worldly aspect of your Muslim life, right? But between you and God is sufficient in terms of your belief, right? For the worldly aspect, for example, marriage laws, burial laws, things like that, then we need to know you're Muslim. You just need to make 2 or 3 people know that you're a Muslim. That's it. So Jacob is interested in Islam. Okay, and we're not gonna leave the stream until Jacob is satisfied and all his questions have been answered. All right. He says, I have iffy and uncomfortable verses. I need context. Can I post it? Yes, you can. Yes. What does, can you address this verse? The Prophet ﷺ said you should listen and obey to your ruler, even if he's an Ethiopian with a small head or a head that looks like a raisin. The Prophet is giving the example of the person who the Arabs would hate to obey. Why would the Arabs hate to obey an Ethiopian? Because only a short time before that, an Ethiopian tried to destroy the Kaaba. Right? Abraha, which is Ibrahim in Amharic, Abraha tried to destroy the Kaaba. That is the most sacred thing today to the Arabs. So that's why the Prophet gave them the one you hate the most. If he's your ruler, no rebellions, no anarchy. It's like saying to going to a guy in Texas and one of these Marines and one of these and say, listen, you follow your ruler even if he's an Arab named Osama. This is the one he hates the most, right? So the Arab at that time hated the Ethiopians. Why? Because the Ethiopians conquered Yemen, colonized Yemen, and tried to destroy the Kaaba. So in their psyche, this is the worst person. Okay? That's the concept. Okay, Jacob says, narrated Anas bin Malik, you should listen to and obey. Okay, we got that one. We answered that one. What's next? You know that if a person comes and says that should I take Shahada, should I enter Islam, I have questions before I'm about to enter Islam, and you don't stay and answer, you're sinful. Even he keeps us till 6 o'clock, right? As long as he's sincere and he's on the verge of entering Islam, because that's the right of Allah. Someone said, I'm not pure enough to enter Islam. The response, I don't know if you were there, but I told him, it doesn't make a difference. It is a debt you owe to Allah to say, I believe in you and all of your messengers. That's a debt you owe to God, whether you're the most vile person or the most moral person. Well, you have to bring the most bizarre exceptions, Ryan. Ryan says, oh, but we would still have to stop for prayer. Why are you bringing these 7th grade exceptions? You know, like 7th graders, you say them a general thing, they bring you a far exception.
But it's good that it's a good thing.
Jacob asked for the verse 551. Okay, what is it, though? Surat. Okay, let's look it up then. The number of the... Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now, if you want to take your shahada on live camera, you could do that too. Yeah. Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 51. So this is going to have to do with Al-Yahud wa Nasara, because Surah Al-Ma'idah has... No, you don't have to come on the stream and do it. If you need to keep your anonymity, no problem here. The reference seems wrong. He said, okay, what is the reference? When you get it right, no problem. Oh, you who believe. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء بعضهم أولياء بعض. In what is a disobedience to Allah? Do not prefer to be to ally with Jews and Christians in the disobedience of Allah or the abuse of another Muslim. Right? Do not go inside with the Jews and Christians to attack Muslims, or to you have an alliance with Jews and Christians, that would make you disobey God. That's the meaning of it. And whoever takes them as allies to attack Muslims or in disobedience to God, then you're one of them. You may be resurrected with them on the day of judgment. Okay? That's the meaning of that verse. So if there is a Muslim who is bad and a Christian who's generally good, and they have a conflict, what do? I don't support the Christian. I condemn the Muslim and I set him right, but I still do not join the Christian army against him. Let's say Saddam Hussein was a really bad guy, which he was, right? He wasn't some great guy. At the end of his life, maybe he made Tawbah, they say. And then the Americans, who are not really good guys, but in the eyes of the world, they were the most upright, fair. And truth be told, if you had a court case, Imran, if you had a court case in 1989, a property case, would you rather be in the court of Baghdad or the court of New Jersey or Chicago? Where are you going to get more rights?
The court of Baghdad, of course.
So a Muslim, no matter what his status, you do not join the Christians over him. Rather, you correct him. He says, listen, I'm not going to pile on another Muslim. That's forbidden for me to do. But I will also not support you. I'm telling you, fix your ways, correct your ways. That's the meaning of the Prophet saying, help your brother, oppressor or oppressed. This is a jahili, incorrect concept. The Prophet quoted it. So the Sahaba were like, oh, Messenger, how? He said, if he's wrong, you correct him. That's how you support your brother, oppressor or oppressed. Because the Arabs used to say, it's just pure tribalism. I don't care what my brother did to you, I'm with my brother. We say, the Prophet said, kept half of it and left half of it. Yes, you are with him, but not fighting with him. Correct him. Is the Quran uncorrupted? Yes, it is uncorrupted. What are the two satanic verses when he spoke to Satan through some falsehood into his speech, but Allah abolished that in which Satan spoke? So we hold that those narrations are not even sound. And the surah you're talking about is Surah An-Najm, the surah in which it is claimed that the satanic verses happened is Surah An-Najm. An-Najm meaning, it means a star, but An-Najm here meaning the revelation. Like a shooting star falls down onto the heart of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Listen to how Allah opens this chapter of the Quran as if knowing that in the future, people will say that there were some satanic verses in there. The satanic verses, for those who don't know, mean, or what it refers to is, the Prophet was reciting Quran, receiving revelation from God. Then Satan quickly whispered a rhyming verse. In that verse, it says, the idols are the beautiful birds of God, and they will intercede for people on the day of judgment. Okay? That's what the verse is. The verse is, وَإِنَّهُنَّ الْغَرَانِيقُ الْعُلَى وَإِنَّ شَفَاعَتُهُنَّ لَتُرْتَجَى. That's what the alleged satanic verse is. So it's like a defense of idolatry. And that Satan snuck it in there. Look what Allah says. To give you your heart certainty that the Quran is uncorrupted, this chapter of Najm opens with, by the star when it sets, or the revelation when it comes down to the Prophet, your companion has never erred nor has ever been deceived. Regarding the revelation, the Prophet has never made a mistake, nor he was deceived, nor does he speak of his own desire. It is nothing other than inspiration that he was inspired. Okay? So, as if saying, we know that this surah, people will make false claims about the revelation. Allah opens the surah, right, negating any possibility of corruption in the Quran. Yeah, it was a narration that was not accepted at all. All right, Bukhari 2252. Did you pull it up, Omar?
Yeah, I tried searching. I don't know what he's referencing. I think that's what he was talking about.
Satanic verses. Okay.
I don't know if is he trolling, like, look at these things. Is he wasting our time?
Kathir, Ibn Kathir. That is simply
This thing is Ibn Kathir, a false prophet, because Ibn Kathir is the one that relates
No, Ibn Kathir is just a scholar. He's just an someone who is a scholar. He's not a prophet or anything.
He's saying, I'm reading the proto-Quran. I don't know is that real scripture?
Where is that? I have no clue what that is. No. Adam, all right, let's take one more. Imran we've been dragging Imran on in this. But you're accustomed to these 4 or 5 hour podcasts.
Oh yeah, we're going 5 hours.
No, we're gonna wrap up now.
Okay,
But tell me something, Imran. What's the status of Mad Mamluks?
Well, so far, we're doing good. Alhamdulillah. It's we just had a multi-day event with a brother from the UK named Sami Hamdi. I'm sure
MashaAllah.
many of you guys heard of him, but he's pretty going pretty.
Oh, you hit mute again. Why does it keep hitting mute?
I don't know why it's keep going mute, but we've been doing a little tour across Chicago, across many different masjids with Sami Hamdi, and we did a live show on our channel as well, the Mad Mamluks.
Can we bring him here?
Yeah, of course. He's. Let's talk offline. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's figure it out. If we're leaving December 22nd for Umrah, but we'd love to have him here.
Oh, that's when he's coming.
Oh, you're organizing. I thought he's already here. Okay.
He was already here, and then he left, but he's coming back again, and that's when I was gonna think about getting you in touch with him.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, he's coming in for how we have that ICNA convention, that mass ICNA convention.
Yeah.
That's
MashaAllah.
when he was.
That's going to be in
coming
Chicago.
for. Yeah. So anyway, we had a multi-day event, and it's amazing, Dr. Shadee, because it speaks volumes about the direction that the Muslim world is headed,
Yeah.
specifically in the West, that someone like him, who is very well known for his attacks on, or at least verbal attacks, on Mohammed bin Salman and many different Muslim countries and their corrupt nature, that someone like him is being given the member all across the Muslim world. They're giving the podium. He's being allowed to speak in the Musalla, and that he's effectively not being given any restriction in what he says and how he says it. He's being invited to be the Jummah Khatib everywhere, and it warmed my heart, because it's about time Muslims put something on the line for their brothers and sisters in Gaza, that they can no longer sit by and idly and hoping and praying for their congressman to do something. We all know the truth of the matter. We know that it is the ineptness, the impotence of Muslim rulers all across the Muslim world who have failed Gaza and Palestine, and all the Muslims in every area, whether it's the Uyghurs in China or the Burmese or in Sudan, where have you, where they've all been massive, colossal failures who don't operate from an interest in Muslims or Islam, but rather they care about their wallets and how fat they get.
The Muslims, they love the truth. And he's speaking the truth. He's so strong in what he's saying. And you worry for him. I worry for him to get a car accident, so-called, because Saudi, they don't play games. NBS will chop you up.
Yeah.
And journalists.
We talked about that. And, ultimately, this is exactly what I'm telling you, Dr. Shadee, or just our listeners in general, is that we have to be able to sacrifice something. If we don't, wear less, for every one of us that cares, and there's 1,000 that don't, or just care on the periphery. It's not that they don't care enough. It's that there's a saying that human beings have this inherent problem where they don't. It's not that they're not caring people, but that their care doesn't extend their line of sight. That what's in front of them is what they care about. And if there is a poor person in front of them, or a person from Gaza that's in front of them that needs food, of course they'll care. But it's not this like leftist idea of humanity's evil. We understand that there is a balance of human beings, that we tend to neglect people suffering that is not right in front of us. And we as Muslims have to make sure that this idea, this the sacrifice, the suffering of Gaza is alive in people's hearts, and that everyone has some part, some role to play, even if it is just in a matter of your family, in your immediate family, and making sure that your children are well informed, and that there's a whole new generation of children who are raised and are equipped to handle and fight back, or at least in terms of activism against the Zionist propaganda. The Zionists don't have no idea what they've created in with this mess. What they've effectively doing with the people of Gaza is that they've really raised a whole new generation of Muslims who and non-Muslims who have seen their atrocities
Yep.
and will fight back against it.
You saw Kamala Harris's daughter, right?
Yeah, their
And
stepdaughter.
if people want to wonder what's going to disentangle the military industrial complex from the lobby, it's people's kids.
Yeah,
When you're going, these people who have multi-million-dollar contracts, they're not machines. They got families.
yeah.
They have people who love them, and they love them, right?
Yeah.
They have an emotional drive in them to preserve those bonds. And when those other bonds are not with you anymore, people will start to change. And Kamala Harris, look at some of her latest comments, and you start wondering, right? If she's being influenced. Clearly she's being, and that's her stepdaughter. It's not even her daughter. For those of you who don't know, Kamala Harris is the vice president's stepdaughter. She's Jewish. And she's raised millions of dollars for children of Gaza. She's unashamed, unabashed in her support for the Palestinians, right?
Yeah.
And Kamala Harris is now clearly in a situation now, in a bind. Hey, Omar, let's take one of these, the last few questions on Sahih Bukhari. If you could look that up, I'll just answer the question on decorations. Decorations for anything, whether it's yourself, your home, it's determined by something called urf. Urf is the custom of the community, and the custom of the community is determined by the pious Muslims. What would 10 pious Muslims consider to be excessive? Right? Like, how much is too much for a shoe? How much money is too much for a shoe that would be a waste of money that God will look down upon and discourage or even consider sinful? Well, how do we know that? It's relative, okay? God and his the messenger, peace be upon him, they didn't operate in the dollar and live the way we lived, so we can't go there for the answer. The answer, we go to the pious Muslims who fast and pray, and you just, through their company, you'll know what these measures are. You say to somebody 50 years ago, or when I was a child and Imran was a youth, that you got a shoe for $120, this was israf, excessive spending, and it was something that you could say very easily is discouraged or sinful. Today, $120 for a pair of sneakers, you got a bargain, right? You got a deal.
Not even just that, Dr. Shadee, they're saying now it's everything's being used as, oh, Abu Hanifa used to dress nice, so you can spend $500 on shoes or $1,000 on shoes while your brothers and sisters are struggling in Gaza. You can go on your multi-country cruises and vacations and stuff. So it's really troubling how some people's examples are being used.
Yeah.
And if those individuals knew that they were being used as an example to do israf and to hoard wealth, they would never have done that in the first place. They would have been mortified at the idea that they're being used as an example to future Muslims that they can spend ridiculous amounts of wealth.
Completely. Jacob says, is the Quran just for Arabs? No, it is not. The Quran and Islam is for all Muslims, all people, from the time of the Prophet until the end of time. All continents and all people. Right? Kafatan linnas, Allah says. We have sent you to all people. Yeah. Kafatan linnas. Okay. Is it for me too? Yes. The Quran is for everybody. It's calling Jews, Christians to the final word of God, affirming all the past prophets and their books, except that their books have been altered. So we don't know what's true and what's false of the Bible, what's true and what's false of the Torah. We don't know what's true. It's been altered. And so Allah gave us the final word. Okay. I saw some verses where it says it was to the Arabs. Yes, maybe giving an example to those Arabs at that time, some address to those Arabs at that time, but not the message as a whole is not just to the Arabs. Maybe some verses speaking and addressing the tribes around the Prophet at that time. Doesn't mean the message is only for them. Okay. Jacob, what are these citations? Could you put the link? All right, we're going to do 10 more minutes, and then is someone here connect with Jacob, someone who has knowledge, connect with Jacob so that he can have somebody to... Adam, no, not you. Adam says it is difficult for urf today since it's a globalized world. The urf is based on the people that live with you in your area, in your town, in your city. So Americans, for example, right? And even prices in New Jersey are different than prices in Omaha, right? Nebraska. So you just look at your local mosque and the local masajid around you. Those pious people will help us determine the urf. There you go. Omar.abbasi@safinasociety.org. Omar will be checking his email. Jacob, we have to stay in touch with you. We will stay in touch with you. All right. I don't want to give it in the comments. Do you have an email? There you go. Email omar.abbasi@safinasociety.org. Okay. And there you go. Hey, Imran, thank you so much for this long episode that you've been on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you need me, Sheikh, I'm always there. Just shout at me, and I'll come at you.
Inshallah.
If you need me there, I'll fly over there.
Listen, I'll tell you what. Sometimes when we have a guest, I like to have a third person to talk with, right?
Yeah,
but I promise you, we won't keep you 2-3 hours like we did today.
No, it's my pleasure, inshallah, and an incredible honor. Please give my salam to Brother Moin and Alex and Saad, everyone else over there.
Inshallah. I will tell them. Jazakallah khairan.
All right, take care.
All right. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in with us, and make dua for Jacob to come and give Allah his haqq and purify himself. And he's going to feel so happy the moment he enters Islam, because that's the nature of the truth. When it settles in the heart, it expands it and gives you a sense of relief that you accept it. But you don't have to worry about every single little thing, as Ubiquitous said here. You don't have to worry about just 2 questions. Is Allah real? Is the Prophet Muhammad true? That's it. Everything else you figure out, you learn that later. All you need to worry about, Allah and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's all you need to worry about. Jazakumullahu khairan, everybody. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wal asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. Wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.